Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Damien Greathead, proudly to say, working for Intuit QuickBooks today, and I'm delighted to be here at QuickBooks Connect Canada, and delighted to be here to share some insights and what we've been working on in terms of helping advisors like you make that transition towards the advisory role that accountants and bookkeepers have an absolute knack of playing. So, as I said, today we're going to be talking about the controller and practical steps towards advisory services. But before we do that, I thought I might just share a little bit about me, and hopefully there's some friends on today's session at QuickBooks Connect that we know very well. So, as I said, my name's Damien Greathead. I'm currently the marketing segment leader for the Accountant Advisor Group at Intuit Australia. I've been working in the accounting and bookkeeping profession and industry for more than 17 years. I was the head of marketing at Practice Ignition, which is now Ignition. I was the VP of Business Development and Accountants Programs at Receipt Bank out of the United States. Before that, I actually worked in an accounting firm, and I must admit I wasn't a very good accountant. The attention to detail required in accounting and bookkeeping was not my strong suit. But what I did love in public accounting was sitting down alongside the client and helping them understand the numbers. So I don't think I was a very good tax accountant. I'm going to say I was a much better managerial accountant. And that's where I really see the opportunity for accountants and bookkeepers to help their clients understand the numbers that sit behind their business. I lived in the United States out of Washington, D.C. for about 15, 16 years. And at the start of the pandemic, April 2020, moved back to Australia and basically got the pandemic starter pack. Everything ticked off. And we got our air fryer, we got our sourdough starter, we got a puppy, and pleased to share that we have a thriving baby boy named Gus, and you can see him down in the picture there with our puppy Jovi. It was a bit of a tense start, but now that Gus has started solids, Jovi and Gus are becoming best of friends, particularly on steak night and particularly on chicken drumstick night. So I'm delighted to be back talking and sharing insights with the Canadian audience, and hopefully we'll be able to see each other in real life again very soon. So that's enough about me. Let's get on with today's presentation, where we're actually talking about this advisory role. And one of the biggest challenges that I've always found is there's no one out there helping us define what advisory is. Everyone says you've got to go to, you are the trusted advisor. You've got to add advisory services, but there's not a lot of practical steps to help us understand what advisory is, and then also to help us communicate with our clients what our advisory services are. Then there's also the challenge of actually how do we charge for these services? That's actually a whole session in of itself, and so we'll only touch on that lightly. But there's a lot of steps towards this advisory role. More often than not, you are doing it on a somewhat semi-consistent basis. And so what we really want to talk about today is a framework that you can sit down with your clients and talk to them about how you're going to help them in their business. So we're going to talk about our definitions and how we can define advisory in front of our clients. We're going to then talk about where to start and how to deliver, and a framework by which you can sit down side by side with your clients and talk through how you're going to help their business. Then we're actually going to focus on this idea of a data controller. Financial controller is a term that I think a lot of people are familiar with, but I think the role of controller has really evolved to not only take on that financial standpoint, but also the data associated with the finance. And if we can get the data control correct, get it right, get it flowing really well, that's going to help us transition into this financial controller as well. Then last but not least, we're going to touch on some tips for success. So any questions that you do have, please write them down. Please send me an email. We'll share that email at the end of today's session. So any questions you do have, send them over to me, and I'll do my best to get back to you in a timely manner. Just remember, I'm about 18 hours ahead in the future, and so far the future is bright. So any questions you do have, just write them down, and I'll get a reply to you as quickly as possible. So let's get into it. And what I want to talk about actually is this model. This is a really effective way and a really simplified way in which we can sit down with our clients and talk to them about the way we're going to help you in your business. The bookkeeping, the compliance, that's a given. But let me tell you what we really do. What I've actually seen some firms do this, and this is a model that Penny Breslin developed to help her clients sit down with their business clients. And what I've seen some of the firms do, they actually laminate this. They print it out and they laminate it and they sit down with the client. It seems a bit old school, but it's a really helpful way to actually frame a conversation. And this is the way we work with you. We're going to help in these four key areas of your business. We're going to make sure that we've got our internal controls correct. We're then going to move on to helping our operational efficiency and make sure that we're being as efficient in terms of how we use our money as possible. We can then work with you on the performance and what are the key performance indicators that we need to be monitoring, that we should be looking at. And then we've got our execution. So what's the strategy that we've defined and how are we actually going to help you achieve that? So our advisory services help in these four distinct areas. Let's get into it and let's actually have a look at each and one of those and what it actually means for your business. So as you're sitting there today, folks, be thinking about as you would be sitting alongside your client, might be actually sitting on a Zoom call with them, but going through this particular model. And first and foremost, it is up to you as to where you want to add value, where you want to start and where you feel most comfortable. But let's go around actually each segment here and talk about them individually, and then we can actually talk about where do we want to get started and where do we feel most comfortable. So let's jump into the catalyst. The catalyst challenges. This is where we're making sure that we're executing effectively. So we've sat down and we've talked about the strategy, we've defined the strategy, and now we're actually focused on executing on that strategy. So what are we doing day in, day out, week in, week out to move our business towards that 3-month, 6-month, 12-month goal? The catalyst is designed to sit with the senior management of the team and talk about how are we doing? Are we doing what we said we were going to be doing? How is our performance tracking against that? So the catalyst role is about sitting alongside your clients and it's about holding them accountable. Damien, you said you were going to do this to drive X results. Have you done that? If not, why not? What are the barriers that we need to remove? So the catalyst role is designed to really be that coach and sit with our clients and say, have you done what you said you were going to do? Why not? And what are the barriers that we can strategize and strategies to overcome particular barriers holding us back on executing on what we said we were going to do? So that's the catalyst, and there's a really exciting conversations happen in that execution catalyst area around what are we doing day in, day out to drive this business to where we want it to go. We've also got our performance side. And what we're looking at here is what are the key performance indicators that drive our business and how are we actually performing against those? Do we have the right team members in place to actually drive us towards that particular goal? What is the individual performance of those individual contributors? Do we have the right people on the bus? So this is where we're talking about bringing a common language to your client's business, and each month, each quarter, sitting down alongside your clients to talk about how is this business tracking against our key performance indicators. And so this is a really critical role because with timely information, we can give almost real-time data on how the business is actually performing financially, but then also digging deeper into what's actually driving those results. So this strategist and the performance part of this framework is really critical because we can say where we want to go, but if we don't actually have the measurements in place and we don't have the milestones in place to measure our performance, then we're really going to not know how we're performing. Are we on track? Are we actually doing what we said we were going to do? So the performance is a really important one. Whole bunch of tools out there to help you do that, even sitting within Intuit QuickBooks Online. Phenomenal reporting. It's almost as if we don't need a whole bunch of tools to help us do any of these perform these particular functions. Even this performance section, we could also just start with this quarter versus last quarter, this month versus this month last year, actual versus budget. These are the types of conversations that we can be having in this performance quadrant that guide the business onto are we achieving and are we moving towards where we want to be. And so I think, again, accountants and bookkeepers, phenomenal opportunity in this performance quadrant to add a lot of value to your clients' businesses. Let's go down to the bottom side of the framework here. And I actually think this is a really interesting area for accountants and bookkeepers that are particularly starting this journey of advisory. So if we've been very much in the compliance and the after the fact bookkeeping, this is a really great opportunity for us to start that value add conversation. And I think in the steward and control quadrant, there's a lot of opportunity to work very closely with our clients. So in the control quadrant, it is exactly that. Are we managing risk and reducing the burden of financial risk on the business? If you go into a lot of your clients' businesses, they're lacking some fundamental internal controls. I remember I would go traveling and I would leave signed checks in the top drawer of my desk. So in case we had to pay rent, had to pay suppliers, had to pay utilities, there were signed checks sitting in the top drawer of my desk. What sort of internal controls are happening there? There aren't any. And so I think this is a really phenomenal opportunity for you as the accountant and bookkeeper to sit down with your clients and say, are we managing the risk of this business correctly? Do we have appropriate controls safeguarding the finances of this business? And given that a client's business, a client's home, that might be their most valuable asset. But if you think about the client's businesses that is generating revenue, generating cash flow, this is one of their most important assets, their business. So do we have internal controls and safeguards protecting the finances of that business? Segregation of duties, making sure we've got appropriate documentation. If you think of all of the opportunities for fraud in your client's business, there's a great 3-month project to help strengthen your client's internal controls. Then the final quadrant, and again, I think accountants and bookkeepers can be really helpful here and play a really prominent role in the managerial accounting. It's the operator efficiency. Are we utilizing our financial resources as efficiently as possible? For example, should we be outsourcing the accounting function, the accounting and bookkeeping function? This is a great conversation to have with some of your clients. You need to focus on making widgets. Why don't we take the financial function off your hands so you can focus on what you do best? That's the type of conversation we've got to have when we're thinking about the operator and our making sure that we're using our resources as efficiently as possible. Are you using your time as efficiently as possible? So I think, again, operator and efficiency with our managerial accounting, with our cost accounting, there's a really good opportunity here for accountants and bookkeepers to have that value add conversation. And the nice thing about that is businesses of all size, startups, one-person bands, two-person bands, all the way up to the large 20-person businesses, they need help in all of these areas. And actually, one of the best signs of success is when you actually step out of this role and bring someone in full time to do that. But all of your clients, I would contend, need some help somewhere within this framework. The key thing here is it's all about where you feel most comfortable. It's all about where is it that you think this client needs help the most. Where do you feel most comfortable, and where do you actually want to go with your business? And I've seen a lot of advisors sit down with their clients and they say, we're going to start down here in the bottom left quadrant, which is the control quadrant, and we're going to make sure that we've got our internal controls correct, and we're going to make sure that we've got our data coming into the system efficiently and timely and correctly. And so we're going to focus on that. That's going to take us about 3 months. And then once we've got the finance system working correctly, once we're confident that the data is coming in timely and accurately, we're then going to move into our next quadrant where we talk about the efficiency side of things. I've actually seen a whole bunch of firms say, you know what, this is where I feel most comfortable and this is where we're going to stay. But again, imagine sitting down alongside of your client, and I'd really encourage you to write a client's name down now, that you think you could have this internal control and stewardship conversation with. So we might lead with internal controls or we might lead with data quality, but that's where we start the conversation. And this is a really comfortable place for accountants and bookkeepers, and particularly with the apps.com ecosystem, we've got a whole host of things that we can be talking about in this steward and control section. I've actually seen some firms say, you know what, our firm is an expert in these two areas. We're going to help you on the stewardship side, the control side, and the operator efficiency. And then we're actually going to work with experts that we know to help on the execution and performance side. So this is, again, really your opportunity for you to define what your advisory services do. And there is an enormous amount of value that can be added just in that bottom left quadrant. Again, if you went through and helped all of your clients strengthen their internal controls, I can almost guarantee you this will lead on to a whole host of opportunity of additional value add. I can almost guarantee you that the quality of referrals that come from your current clients will be infinitely greater because you've had this conversation with them about strengthening internal controls, about data quality, about data timeliness. That's what the referrals are going to be coming in and asking about. And I know that if that's where you want to focus, I'm almost certain that you've got people in your network that can help with the other areas, with the other quadrants. There's actually a firm that we work with, a firm that I used to work with, and she doesn't actually want to do the control and operator side. She doesn't want to do the steward and efficiency side. Her sort of formal training is more on the corporate finance. So she actually works on the strategy and catalyst. So she sits down and talks about, are we using our financial resources as efficiently as possible? Should we be buying equipment? Should we be selling certain assets? What's stopping us from achieving our year-end revenue targets or our sales targets? What's actually happening in the strategic level of the business? So that's where she does her best work, and she partners with firms to take care of the control and operator side. And so again, this is about you defining what it means in your business as that trusted advisor. And as I said, if you don't feel comfortable up the top, I'm almost certain that within your network, you've got professionals that are able to provide that advice. One of the things that I think is really important is you can't do one without the other. So you can't just come in and say, I'm just going to take care of execution. And I think a lot of people originally in this advisory type of conversation, they just thought that, you know what, I just want to come in and do the big consulting engagements and do the business coaching and do the strategy day and the customer surveys. And I just want to do the consulting and the high level strategic planning stuff. You can't actually do that if you haven't got the control quadrant and the efficiency quadrant. We can't talk about performance if we don't have confidence in the quality of the data, of the quality of the financial information. So if we do want to just exclusively work in the execution and performance quadrant, which you absolutely can, but you've got to make sure the other two areas are being taken care of. And that's where I see a lot of firms actually fall down, because we don't have timely quality information flowing into the firm. So that's, again, what's really critical, that I can choose a particular quadrant to stick in, and that's fine. But what's really important is we've got to make sure that we've got the other quadrants covered, because if we don't have good data quality coming in, there's no way that we can have effective conversations in that catalyst and strategist quadrants. It's just not going to happen. So again, I think for accountants and bookkeepers, a really good opportunity to add value to the client's business by making sure that we've got all four areas covered. This firm, she works out of Chicago actually, and she works with a bookkeeping business and a tax business to take care of the control side of things, take care of the compliance side of things, and she just focuses on the performance and execution when she sits down and meets with her clients. Interestingly, she sits down and meets with her accountant and bookkeeping team 2 days before before she sits down with the client, and to make sure that all the numbers are right, to make sure that she understands the reports that have been generated by the partner firm. So it's not actually her firm that's doing this work, but she's sitting down a couple of days before she meets with the client. She's meeting with the team that takes care of the stewardship and the operator side to make sure she has the complete picture before she sits down with the client. So she's got this amazing symbiotic relationship with a bookkeeping firm, with a tax firm, and then she sits down with the client to talk about the top two of the execution and performance. So really interesting business model, but she recognized she was trying to do execution and performance while someone else that she didn't know, that she didn't have confidence in, was taking care of control and efficiency, and it just didn't work. So she's the one sitting at the center of this diagram, but she's not necessarily, her firm's not necessarily the one that's doing all of the work associated with the quadrants. And I think that's a really important distinction as well. So you can define where you want to add the value, but what's really important is that you're able to make sure the other quadrants are taken care of, because your ability to execute on your quadrant is intrinsically linked to the ability to take care of the other quadrants. So I think what's really important is anywhere we want to be in this particular model, in this particular framework, we need good data. And that's what I was touching on before, is we can't talk about execution and performance if we don't have confidence in the data coming into the system. And think sort of before QuickBooks Online and bank feeds, when we're in this desktop world and it required a lot of manual data entry. We couldn't actually move into that trusted advisor role because we didn't have timely information. It would take us time to collect the information, and then it would take time for us to process the information. And by the time we'd actually collected, processed, produced the reports, the client had moved on. So that's what I think, again, is really exciting, and the opportunities that are made available as a result of QBO, QuickBooks Online, and the app ecosystem mean that we can get information in as close to real time as possible, get it processed, get the bulk of the data processing taken care of automatically, which frees us up to actually review, look for anomalies, and then most importantly, get the insights to our clients in a much more timely manner. So I think that's, again, a phenomenal opportunity. The firm I was talking about in Chicago, basically the books close at the end of the month. She's meeting with her clients on the 10th of the next month, to actually talk about what's happening, how did last month go, how are we progressing against budget. So she's got, and the team that looks after the stewardship and the operator, they've got that 10-day window to actually process all of the information, produce the reports, look for the anomalies, identify the talking points with the client. And so really that 10 days is not about the actual collection of information and organization of it. It is very much about the processing of the information, because the information is all coming in real time. And that's where we start this idea of being a data controller for our clients. It's one thing to be talking about financial control, but what I would really encourage you to be talking about with your clients is how do we make sure we've got all the data we need coming into us in a timely manner. And I think this is a really helpful analogy that you can talk to your clients about to help them understand your role as a data controller. And basically, whatever city you're actually in, you can bring up the local subway map or the local bus map. And this is a way in which you can facilitate a conversation about making sure we have access to all of the data we need and making sure that it flows into the system in a timely manner. And this idea of controller now extends beyond finance into data. And actually, it's almost as if it's vice versa, isn't it? Because if we don't have access to the data, then we can't actually perform the function of that financial controller. So think about that in a different way. Our starting point is the data controller, and that enables us to step into that financial controller, the steward, the strategist, the executioner, etc. So it actually starts with the data as we go through. So think about the subway map, and now think about all of the different sources of data that you need each week, each month, each day to be fed into your system or the client system so that we can have these financial controller conversations. There are a whole host of sources of information that you need access to that need to flow into the financial system before we can get on to the reporting and the tax side of things. So start to think about all of the different sources of data that you need. And this will always depend on the particular client. This will depend on what you're doing for the client. This will depend on if you're taking 100% control of it or if the client's doing a bunch of it. Because I know a lot of clients love to raise their own invoices, for example. Obviously, if you're dealing with retail or e-commerce, there's a certain point of sale and e-commerce process that's associated with it. But think about what is all of the data that you need on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to facilitate these value add conversations. And what you'll find is that once we've actually mapped what we need, our role then is to go out into the apps.com ecosystem and look for the best apps that enable the collection, processing, and flow of data into QuickBooks Online. What I would be thinking about is building this tech stack, and we've been talking about tech stacks for a number of years, but I don't think we've ever really thought about it in terms of why are we building these tech stacks. We're building these tech stacks to enable the free flow of information in as close to real time as possible so that you can actually have value add conversations as a result of what happens in the collection and reporting side of things. So anytime that we have to rekey information, anytime that we have to touch paper, that disables our ability to provide timely and good quality information to our clients. So once we've got the map, we can then go out to the app ecosystem and look at the best app to sit in these particular fields. What I would suggest is you don't want to go out and be supporting 6 and 7 different time collection applications. You don't want to be supporting 4 and 5 different inventory applications, expense management applications, because think about the burden on you and your team. So what we want to be developing is we want to be developing this consistency of our technology stack that enables us to scale. What I did find interesting in working with a particular client, she wanted to get into the strategist and executioner roles, really understood the importance of the bottom 2 quadrants as well. But unfortunately, what she did is her differentiator was her advisory services, but she didn't choose those clients specifically with the technology in mind. She chose the clients, and they were, well, I don't think there was much choice in the clients because there were 5 distinct industries which had 5 distinct technology requirements, and her business ground to a halt because she spent all of her time supporting 5 different technology stacks. And what the light bulb moment for her was, I can't support 5 distinct industries. I've got to bring that all together so that I can have one technology stack that I can roll out to 5 similar clients. And that's really, I think, where the opportunity again is for accountants and bookkeepers to look at this technology stack the sources of data and the technology that enables that flow of information, standardize that, and then roll that out to more and more similar clients. And rather than going out and trying to bring on 5 different industries, go out and bring on 5 businesses within that same industry. And you'll see your ability to scale, your ability to specialize just goes through the roof as a result of that standardization and that specialization. So, a couple of tips for success. Think about your next hire. A lot of accountants and bookkeepers, if you ask them who are you trying to hire, they're going to tell you more accountants and bookkeepers. Don't try to clone yourself. So instead of bringing on another accountant or bookkeeper, what about bringing on a technologist? What about bringing on an onboarding specialist? What about bringing on an administrator that is really just focused on making sure that this data is flowing correctly? Make sure someone is monitoring the connections, because I've seen a lot of advisory services fall over because they actually haven't been monitoring the connections, and 90 days or 60 days will pass and those connections are broken. And so they actually can't have those value add conversations which they're promised because they haven't been maintaining the system, because they've been busy doing the bookkeeping, accounting, and compliance. So think about your next hire, and I can almost guarantee you your next hire should not be an accountant or bookkeeper. Your next hire should be an administrator, should be a technologist, should be an onboarding specialist, and they're responsible for the client utilizing the tools, the implementation of the tools, responding to troubleshooting. And that's really what their role is, because that will free up your time to focus on where you're adding value based on those quadrants. Start small. Avoid overpromising, and it just goes back to a couple of times where you go to a firm's website, or you sit down with firms, and they tell you what exactly what they tell you what their advisory services are, and it's monthly coaching and it's monthly reporting, etc., etc. But if they don't have that data quadrant worked out, there's no way that we can be doing the KPI monitoring. There's no way that we can be doing the monthly coaching, because we actually don't have good, timely information coming in. Focus on onboarding. That first 30 days is critical. So if your client's not using the app in that first 30 days, we've got to get out there and we've got to work out why. In fact, if they're not using it within that first 5 days, I'm sure expenses have been incurred. So if they're not using that app in the first 5 days of talking about it with your clients, we've got to get out there and work out why. Do some more training, etc. And what I think in that instance we can do, and that's why this next hire is not you, is not an accountant, is not a bookkeeper, because you need someone monitoring the client for that first 5 days, first 30 days, to make sure they're using the tools that you put into their business. Because if we can't collect the information in a timely manner, there's no way that we can do the activities that flow on. Procedures are critical, and procedures are critical, and this is why getting vertical makes a lot of sense. And getting vertical allows us, our procedures, our onboarding, our team, to really narrow their focus. And what we can do is we can deliver this standardized experience for our clients. I would much prefer our team to be experts in a small set of tools that they use day in, day out, than being experts in this vast app ecosystem that is out there. So the procedures, onboarding, they're critical. And if we do just focus on restaurants, or do just focus on trades, or do just focus on professional services, that allows us to be laser focused with our onboarding, with our procedures, and it does allow us to scale. Build one tech stack, not 15 tech stacks. That's why vertical is so important. The other side of it, particularly if we think about those procedures and developing those procedures, what we can actually do is we can provide a consistent experience to all of your clients. And that's really exciting as well, because the referrals that will come in from those clients will be infinitely higher value than another referral coming from a different area of focus of your firm. Don't start from scratch. I would imagine that you've probably got 2 or 3 of a particular industry, of a particular client in your business that you enjoy working with. So you don't necessarily need to start from scratch, but be quick to recognize that not all clients will fit this new model. That doesn't mean that you have to fire those clients. That just means we can save our own time, save our own stress levels by recognizing that they're not a fit for this part of the business, and parking them where is appropriate. You might get to a point where you're actually going to say, you know what, it might be best if they go somewhere else. But as you're getting started, what I've sort of found is just recognize that they may not be a fit for this and deal with them appropriately. As you become more comfortable, as you start to build this muscle and build this function within your business, you'll be able to then make a decision as to what you want to do with those particular clients. But just recognize that not all clients will fit, and handle them appropriately. And as the advisory side starts to grow, we will have more options in terms of how we work. So what are the key takeaways? From today's session, you define your advisory services. So it really is up to you to define what it means to be the trusted advisor to your clients. You don't have to do everything. That framework that we provided, that's a conversation starter, but you focus on where you want to add value. And if you are focused in just one quadrant, and we're just going to focus on that quadrant to get confidence, to build this aspect of the business, to build our skill set, no problems. Who do we need to partner with to take care of the other quadrants? For you to be successful, you need to be in control of the data. You need to be making recommendations for the technology, for the ecosystem, for how the information flows into the accounting software. So take control of that. And that subway map is a really effective analogy to help clients understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and get their buy-in to the process that you're taking them through. Consistency is key. That's going to the smaller number of things you become an expert in, the easier it's going to be for you, the easier it's going to be for the team. So that consistency is really important. The riches are in the niches. The efficiency, the ability to specialize, the ability to charge a premium because of specialization is really exciting. And then last but not least, simplify your comms. Simplify what it is that you're actually doing for your clients and how you're helping them. That will really help them to better understand exactly what it is that you're doing for them. And as I said earlier, I think if you just went into your clients' businesses and said, you know what, for the next 3 months, we're just going to focus on internal controls and data control. Your life will be infinitely better or less stressed because the data's coming in a much better, in a much more efficient way. But also your clients will be sleeping more soundly because we've got safeguards protecting their business in place. And I think that's a really great place that accountants and bookkeepers can start as they progress into this trusted advisor role. So ladies and gentlemen, that's it from me. Thank you very much for joining this session. I hope there's been 1 or 2 takeaways. That framework, really, really effective to sit down with your clients and just talk through it. This is where we're going to focus on. This is what we're going to do for the next 3 months, and then we'll move our way around the circle. The other side is that subway and data analogy. I hope that has given you a couple of ideas of how you can talk to your clients about the importance of getting this information. Connect with me on LinkedIn. There's not too many Damien Greatheads in the world. My email address is there, so if you do have any questions from today's session, feel free to reach out. A bit of a plug for our Strategy in the Virtual Controller podcast, where Penny Breslin and I talk about all these things associated with building this type of a function in the firm. So to the QuickBooks Connect Canada team, thank you so much for having me. Absolute delight, and hopefully we'll see each other in real life soon. Thank you very much.